So my number two film that shaped my fears is 1976's Network. This is a film starring Sidney Lumet, not starring Sidney Lumet, directed by Sidney Lumet, starring Faye Dunaway, William Holden, Peter Finch, Robert Duvall, and Ned Beatty. The IMDb plot summary: a television network cynically exploits a deranged former anchor's ravings and revelations about the news media for its own profit, but finds that his message may be difficult to control. So this is a film that very much so is in dialogue, I think, with Face in the Crowd for sure. I mean, they very much so were influenced by a lot of the same messages that they were bringing up. I mean, I saw this film first time maybe 20 or so years ago, and it has always stuck with me and actually become more scary, I'll use that word, over time. And the reason that this film speaks to me, especially in the context of fears, is this movie really is about, in a similar way to we were discussing with Face in the Crowd, is a fear of systems, whether we're all in these giant systems that are very powerful, control us in ways we do and don't even understand. Mm-hmm. And that because of this, it's very difficult to fight back against that. Like, there's not an individual villain. There's no person in this movie who's the bad guy. There is just this amorphous system that you have to fight against. And it especially what happens to Howard Beale, you see how you cannot really, or at least is what this movie is saying, is you can't fight back against the system. The system always wins in the end. So then what is so scary to me about that premise is like, okay, well then, is there any hope at all? Like, can we actually, like we were talking about earlier with Face in the Crowd, like, beat back these systems that are, slowly kind of killing society? Well, what can we do? I mean, yes, these are human created things, but can we actually dismantle them? And, what this film does so well too, is it shows, this newscaster who kind of goes crazy essentially and rants about like, oh, this is all fake and everything's a lie and, all this stuff. And obviously that resonates very well with the audience because people kind of feel that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wow, someone's actually saying it who's on the TV. This is back in the mid 70s when TV was super, super powerful. It'd be like someone now today saying this on Twitch, I guess. But and the system actually allows him to do that. At first they're seduced by the ratings too, like similar to Face in the Crowd. It's all about money, right? And this movie is a lot about how the corporations have taken over the news. There's a lot of some B plots around that as well, where who's in control, the editorial or the corporation. But the corporation's okay with him going on every day and essentially espousing these things against the system in general. So it's in a way is saying that, great, freedom of speech, cool, like you can say whatever you want, but what's really that's not that can't necessarily be the only tool you use to fight back against the system, because he has freedom to say all these things on the network that is paying him money to basically say, oh, the system's a lie, even though the network who's part of the system, they kind of let him do it up until the point where he actually will endanger the money of the network. And he starts talking about, oh, you can't do this merger with the Saudis, because screw the Saudis. And at that point, they're like, uh-oh, like this guy's actually gone too far. It doesn't matter, criticize the system all you want, but if you're putting our bottom line in jeopardy, that's what we have to draw the line. It's all about that. And to me, actually, one of the I'll say the word scariest scenes in any film ever is the Ned Beatty speech. One of the most amazing scenes in any film too, where he basically sits Howard Beale down and speaks him the real truth about how the world actually works. That there are, you talk about, the Saudis and the Arabs and the Americans. Like there's no Saudis, there's no Arabs, there's no Americans, there's no Western, there's no Eastern. There's just one big system of corporations. And that's how the world works. There is no democracy. He says there's no democracy, there's no America. And, honestly, I believe that is also how the world works. That we're in this place now where there are all these things are sort of side distractions to the real problem. And even when you know what that is, I mean, he tells Howard Beale he basically reveals the real truth to Howard Beale, and Howard Beale can't do anything to fight against that, and then loses in the end. And it really
and
just
he can't either.
Who's Ned Beatty?
Yeah.
Right. No, totally. Yeah. He's not like, oh, this is my evil plan. He's like, look, dude, like we're all in this thing. I just happen to be, higher up the chain. But look, this is all like the system is really in control here. And that's a scary thing to feel like, well, then who is manning the ship? I'd rather have a crazy person who's like a total insane person leading the ship, because at least, okay, we get rid of the captain, we're fine. But the fact that there is no one at the helm, then it's like, whoa, then what's really going on here? That is actually even more scary to me. And that's what this movie, takes it to that even next level, past what Kazan was doing with Facing the Crowd. Again, I think they're both brilliant films and equally brilliant. I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but it's just looking at things in a larger way. I mean, now it's been 20 years has passed, and there's been more like corporatization of every sector of the economy since when Kazan was working in the 50s. And that to me is scary. And the fact that you can't, even if there's been a lot of talk, and some people believe, oh, you just need to get on TV and speak the truth, and that's all you need to do, and I just got to speak the truth. Okay,
or on Twitter.
Yeah, or on Twitter. Oh, just let me say the truth, and once the truth gets out, all of a sudden the truth will set you free, and the truth will change people's minds. I don't really believe that's true. Like, okay, that's something. I'm not saying don't speak the truth, but if you speak the truth, all of a sudden that doesn't change anything. You need to then enact that change, and that's what this movie shows too. Like, he speaks the truth, but nothing changes. If anything, things get worse for him. But I think that is what, to me, is always that one scene with Ned Beatty. I mean, you check, if you've never seen the movie, just put that on YouTube. It's like 3-4 minutes, one of the most amazing monologues, and it still gives me chills and instills a fear in me of like, oh my God, like this is where we are doomed. Still. We're doomed, right? And this movie was made in the 70s. And I think it's only even more true now. I mean, he could give the same speech if they remade this movie in 2022. Ned Beatty's speech could be delivered today, and nothing would need to change at all about it, and it's still just as relevant. So, to me, it's these systems of control, much like when Facing the Crowd, that no one's manning those, and we can't really do anything about it. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I mean, it is an episode about fear, so you want to talk about the fears. But also I just say too, like, the movie is very funny. It's a satire. The stuff with the Marxist extremists who are fighting over, like, there's a plotline of these Marxist group who get a TV deal because now all of a sudden everything Howard Beale is saying is popular in ratings. They're trying to find other extremist points of view to put on the TV. And there's this great scene where they're arguing about, oh, I want this cut of the profits, and they're getting their talent manager in there. And it's a big satire of how these revolutionary groups can be co-opted into the system as well. It's just a brilliant film that, again, because it's so much like Facing the Crowd, you watch and you're like, wow, this is still happening today. It's even scarier in that respect.
Yeah, this is obviously one of the masterpieces of film. It's in the pantheon. So yeah, I agree with everything you said, obviously. But yeah, it's interesting, like, how they are in dialogue with each other. And I was thinking a lot about that, obviously on the themes you touched on, but also, the Lonesome Road character can be sort of maligned and panned for in a different way, that, oh, you're connecting with the dumb masses, or you're speaking to them, and that's somehow, lesser in a way than what Howard Beale is doing. But it's the way that these two movies, if you look at them in that dialogue sense, it kind of normalizes that as well, in a way. That's why these fears are so much about the system, and to me at least transcend political affiliations and parties.
Yeah. Right.
Because it doesn't matter where you come from, it's the same setup, really, that here is somebody who's connecting with people on something that he or she believes in, or actually we don't know what they believe in it, but that doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's really about, oh, have you tapped into something that connects you with the broader masses? And in the network case, the masses are portrayed to be sort of more educated city living people, versus in Facing the Crowd, it's sort of more of the rural, middle America sort of crowd. But at the end of the day, it's just people.
Exactly.
And I thought that was very interesting, that it kind of humanizes that in a way.
Right. I mean, the two movies, if you see it like that, it's like, well, you can't just say, oh, well, those are the dumb hicks who fell for Lonesome Roads. Oh, the people in New York never would. Well, actually, like, Network is saying, no, it's like, it could be, it's honestly the same. And the system, I mean, because everything is political. So the system is political, but it's not it doesn't, I mean, to paraphrase Ned Beatty in this film, there are no Republicans, there are no Democrats, there's no conservatives, no liberals. There's just a system that is driving towards essentially just profit. And that is the god of this system. And it's like, how can we exploit as much or get as much profit as possible? And then nothing else matters. And that is incredibly political, but not in this traditional, like, political party lens, I guess I should say.
No, absolutely.
And that's what makes it scarier in a way, because then it feels that, okay, well, all this back and forth that goes on. I mean, just talk about America first. Well, you can't say it in the world, but in America, at least, like, where we view, as every country does, through the lenses of the political parties that exist. But really, that's almost beside the point, is what both of these movies are basically saying. It's like, who really cares one way or the other, Democrat, Republican? The system is the thing that's controlling everything. And, it always wins, or at least that's what both of these films kind of say, though in a way, like, Facing the Crowd is a little more optimistic, I think, because you see that the people that try to ride that system end up, empty at the end, because Lonesome Rhodes is still lonesome at the end. He doesn't really get what he wants, even though he thought he wanted attention. But, that can only get you so far. Whereas in this film, like, Howard Beale, I just think feels like there's nothing else to do but, quote unquote, speak the truth, because everything else has been taken from him. And he's at wit's end, so he feels he has nothing to lose. But, the film actually, he does lose in the end, the only thing he has left. It's, again, not to be pessimistic, but this is an episode about fears. I mean, I think both these movies do. I watch them like, oh crap, like, what can we do?
What can we do? On the Lonesome Road thing, I actually think either he goes crazy and in a few years he starts all over again.
Well, that's the scary moment in that film. I forgot we didn't talk about that scene where Walter Matthau's like, we've seen you, you'll just come back. And maybe you won't be as big, but you'll come back. And that is 100% true. Like,
exactly,
the amount of reformed, sort of quote unquote canceled people, they all come back as in a different form. No one's ever really canceled. It's just, he'll be, if he decides to continue to go on that road.
Or it's less about him, like we've been saying, it's once again the system. If the system sees something in whatever his brand of crazy is at that time, and if the system feels that, we could leverage from this, then he'll be back. But here's the thing, talking through this, is that yes, the system is, but let's not forget the system is being maintained and propelled by people.
True.
And that is why, like, the system is not just some like alien amorphic thing. It is very much a sum total of people's fears and motivations and intentions, all summed up. So, which is why this is scarier, because it's sort of this endless cycle. Unless we as a human race totally change in terms of what our intentions and motivations and picture of success means, the system doesn't change either. The system has just been mirroring what we valued,
Totally. Yeah, it brings, I view it as it highlights the darker parts of humanity and focuses on that. And then that is what it feeds off of. And we need to, as a society, find the good parts of who we are as humans. And if we just shift to that and have a society and a life based around love and not profit, that's where we can break free of this. But that's a hard thing to do, because the dark side, as they say or as they show a lot in Star Wars, dark side is always stronger than the light. Like, the dark is stronger, but you need just to get but they're always a minority. In Star Wars is only 2 Sith. There can only be 2. So there's not many of them, but they're strong. But once you get a lot of the Jedi, anyway, not to make this into a Star Wars episode, but no, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's
But on a lighter note, on a more positive note, I think the reason why this whatever we are in continues is because we do all have light in us as well. And even though there may not be broad sweeps of change happening that we can really grasp, the fact that we can get up every morning and kind of do what we have to do and still find meaning is because we have that center of light in us. So otherwise we would have all been doomed,
That's true.
Right after Facing the Crowd was made in the
That's true.
Whenever that was made, right? So yeah, I think that's sort of the interesting kind of contradiction to all of this, I guess.
No, totally. I mean, I am optimistic about the future long term. I think when I look at these movies, it's not like, oh, we're doomed in the future. It's like, okay, well, we're still here. We're still in the same place that we're in the 50s and the 70s. These are still the same problems. But again, like I mentioned during the Facing the Crowd piece, you know, these systems are new. Like, it's not like we've lived under this yoke for thousands of years. It's only really been a couple hundred, and not even the whole world was under the yoke until the 20th century of that really the end of the 20th century. So it's really only been 20 years that we've been all woven together into this global system. So it's new, and it's quickly showing itself to not work. And I think at the end of the day, love always wins. It just sometimes takes a while. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.